Hello and welcome to Season 5 of the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. For the past few years, we've been digging deep into the history of hi-fi, as well as how geopolitics and socioeconomic forces are shaping its present realities. This season, we'll also start to look at hi-fi and audiophilia with an eye toward the future. What's this hobby going to look like as demographics shift? What can we do to bring in new enthusiasts? How will the gear and the hobby itself evolve in the coming decades? To discuss the possibilities, here's host Jorden Guth and this week's guest.
Hello and welcome to the SoundStage Audiophile Podcast. Today we have Blake Alty, Director of Product Development at Paradigm and Anthem, and John Bagby, the Managing Director of PML Sound International. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
So before we get into Paradigm and MartinLogan and Anthem and all that fun stuff, let's hear a little bit about how you guys got to where you are now. Like how you guys got either the bug of hi-fi, or I know, John, you have kind of a unique story in hi-fi and in this industry. But yeah, like give me a little bit of an origin story of both you gentlemen.
Blake, why don't you?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. So my history in getting into this is probably not a traditional one, but I assume there aren't many traditional intros into the hi-fi industry. I have been at Paradigm now for coming up on 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I originally started here back then. I started in technical support, working with the team there and helping people with product support questions and different things. And then from there, I had gained enough knowledge from the company, and I moved into my role as a trainer. So I started traveling around the East Coast, and as John was the West Coast trainer at that time. So we would travel around North America and abroad to help people understand our products. And then from there, we gaining valuable insight into the products. We got tapped, both of us at the same time there, to become product managers. At that time, I had covered Paradigm and John had covered Anthem. And then that went on for a few years until the acquisition came about. And then John had moved into a managing director role. And at that time, I took over the Anthem line as well, and then since then, taken on a bit more responsibility here as well. And now I'm down in the R&D department, looking over acoustics and mechanical design. I'm just a few feet away from our anechoic chamber here, so the role's been expanded over the time. So it's been a journey from kind of the bottom up, but it's great now. Kind of covering a lot of bases here. And I love being able to do all those pieces together because I get to do the product, the design of the product, as well as the acoustics, make sure everything fits together and stuff. So there's no disconnected pieces. It's all kind of interwoven. So yeah, it's been.
You get to see the kind of the customers, whatever they're asking for, potentially what they don't even know they want, and developing that into an actual product.
Yeah, that's really cool. Trying to see it as a holistic approach rather than just saying, customer wants this, and then tell a guy that he tries to figure out what his interpretation of that is. It's more holistically kind of viewing it as a whole system. Very
cool. And John, you want to give, for those who don't know, a little bit of the backstory of your history?
Sure. So Scott Bagby, my father, was one of the original founders of Paradigm. So obviously I grew up in it. In terms of the factory, working, on the line, being in engineering, sort of on the days that I was allowed to go to work with my dad. It was just something that I always really, really enjoyed from a, music standpoint, from a movie standpoint. Could sit in my room and listen to music for hours. So, I grew up loving it. But, at the same time, it was always around. And so it was something that I maybe took a little bit for granted in terms of it's not something that everybody gets to experience to the same degree, and that wasn't a shared experience until I got older. And Paradigm wasn't necessarily something that I had a great interest in terms of taking over. And so Scott in 2005 took on some private equity partners as the majority holders. And so they were in charge of the company for about 15 years. So when I actually got into the industry was a little bit later on. So I joined a local integrator in 2011. And so we worked in customers' houses doing installations, smart homes, networking, security, HVAC, and most importantly, AV, whether it's distributed audio or home theater. And it was then that I really caught the bug and I really fell in love with not just music and the products, but with the industry. And that was delivering my first sort of more premium home theater to the customers and seeing the looks on their face and watching them get to enjoy it as we're walking them through a couple demo clips. And that to me was infectious. And so then a few years later, I got told about, an opening at Paradigm. So that would have been around 2014, 2015. And so interviewed, didn't actually get the job that I interviewed for, but Paul Grove, the SVP of sales at the time, said he might have something for me longer term. And so I actually joined Blake for 3 days a week in technical support. And then I did 3 days a week working as an integrator still. So same thing, became a trainer in 2015, 2016, Anthem product manager starting in 2017. And then I continued in that role until assuming my current position or the beginnings of my current position in 2019, when Scott and myself made the decision to reacquire the company from the private equity group that had acquired it originally. In that transaction, we also, of course, got MartinLogan as part of the family that had been built. And it very much is an integrated community, but with a lot of separation between engineering and sort of the parts that really differentiate and separate a brand. And so my role has sort of grown over time. Originally, it was just product development, but now I've sort of stepped also into a sales and marketing position as well.
And we kind of talked about this a little bit, literally right before we started and pressed record. But the idea, and this is fascinating to me. So the main brands, we got Paradigm, we got MartinLogan, Anthem, and GoldenEar. But we were kind of talking about this idea that those brands are actually fully separate. And now this is not just like separate in the sense of like you're marketing to different people or you have different visions of what you guys are going to do, like physically separate in terms of the space and the teams and all of that. So walk me through a little bit about this and kind of the thought behind keeping them separate and not doing what typical like big companies that buy other companies or acquire or whatever do, which is just throw everybody into the same room and say, figure it out.
Yeah. So when the private equity group acquired MartinLogan as well and merged Paradigm and MartinLogan, Scott was always extremely vocal about the fact that there needed to be separation, that the engineering needed to be done by separate teams, that there had to be dedicated resources to the products on the side of both companies. It was a necessary thing if you want to maintain an identity. If you start putting everything together, lines start becoming very blurred. And then you end up with what we've seen time and time again, where it's largely just one brand wearing the badge of another. Maybe it's got different, finishes or different industrial design, but fundamentally they are the same. And so we always try to maintain that separation and ensure that, certain things may end up being shared, that they're not something that really is definitive in a product. If you've designed a 1 kilowatt subwoofer amplifier, you've designed a 1 kilowatt subwoofer amplifier. And so it's not something that we're going to go out and design a different one for the sake of not using the same amplifier. So we share things like that, but when it comes to the drivers and the look, that's when we want to maintain that separation as much as possible. And so then GoldenEar is being run out of our Ottawa office, out of our Anthem office. So again, the team up there, was the team that originally worked on the GoldenEar products, is still operating out of Ottawa and is maintaining their separation from the other two brands.
And then MartinLogan is in Kansas?
Yes, MartinLogan is based in Kansas, so that's where they were originally from. Lawrence, Kansas, beautiful little town, about an hour outside of Kansas City.
And to be fair, the manufacturing of all the brands, or at least a good chunk of them, like we've documented the manufacturing of the MartinLogan speakers actually in the Paradigm facility, because you guys have a massive facility in Toronto. So we're specifically talking about like the R&D and the research and the design and the engineering that goes into them. But the manufacturing, obviously, it makes sense to kind of have that under the same house, same not same lines, because there's actually different sections of that facility as well. But you kind of gain from that being integrated, but you still have that separation in the design and engineering and all of that jazz. Is that right? Am I on?
Yes, 100%. So it's your engineering, your design, so the industrial designers, the mechanical designers, the acoustics, electronics. So they've got a team that's dedicated to MartinLogan developments, located in Lawrence, Kansas. And then Paradigm has similar in Mississauga, with Anthem working to sort of provide the electronics on the back end. And so then that tends to be where there's more crossovers with the electronic side of things, because it's both provided by Anthem for the two brands.
And I think you touched on one point there as well. We have a large facility here, and that helps us leverage the economies of scale, where you can benefit from that without having like the amalgamation of these brands together. But one thing you touched on specifically was even different lines. So the MartinLogan team, there's a MartinLogan team who builds MartinLogan. There's Paradigm team that builds Paradigm. So they don't, it's not just a line shift changes and people just build whatever's in front of them. It's a dedicated teams to building dedicated products and know what they're doing. It's their expertise for these. Electrostatic speakers are quite a bit different, with very specific things to build from MartinLogan.
Yeah, I remember going into detail on that, and the filament, and there were basically magicians that were doing it that have done this for years and years. So very cool. When we're thinking about these different brands, and like, I don't know, there is obviously overlap between the consumers that you guys target these brands towards, but is there like a thought from your level where you're saying like, this is kind of how this brand has always approached a consumer, or these are the things that consumers love about this brand, we're never going to change it? Or like, how do you guys, with having this many brands, look at different consumer groups and kind of target one brand towards that and another brand towards something else? Or do you even think about that?
Well, I think largely with keeping our team separate, at least from the point of view of product development on the Paradigm and Anthem side, that largely is separate. Not so much as not thought about entirely, but it's not something where we kind of carve up a section and say, you take care of this and we take care of this segment because you're more towards that. But I'd say that naturally forms on its own about what our products are and what they mean to people. I think we've got Paradigm fans, and you'll have MartinLogan fans, and you'll have GoldenEar fans, and people who are dedicated. And while developing products for Paradigm, I'm trying to get everyone to be a fan. I would love that, but it's not trying to segment that off and tell them what we're doing, what they're doing. It's just coming up with the best possible product for that brand specifically, and that's, I think, comes with having the completely different development teams. Or we're not sitting in a room together, right? Because and just developing all of our products together and cutting them up, because then that would have bleed over between them as well. So it's very separate in those regards.
So when I think of these different brands, like I do think of very specific things. Like when I think of MartinLogan, I think electrostatic. When I think of Anthem, I actually think of ARC, which is funny. Anthem room correction, and that's probably because I had the privilege to talk to a lot of the folks that developed it and all of that, and got to see the Ottawa facility and all these really cool things. And when I think of Paradigm, like, again, something very different. I don't have as much experience with GoldenEar, so I don't have like a thought in my mind. But when I think of all these brands, like, I consider how vast you guys span the market and the kind of hobby of hi-fi. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people can start with Paradigm systems as their first entry into hi-fi, like into high quality audio. Like, my kind of understanding is that Paradigm has always been and probably will be one of those like value brands, in the sense of, for a very reasonable price, you're getting a lot of speaker. When you're looking at like kind of where the market is now, do you see more people kind of going towards those kind of I'm not going to say entry point products, but like, do you see stuff like the Paradigm kind of entry series being more popular than these Halo products, these massive speakers that are coming out that are in the tens and $20,000s of dollars to get set up?
I think, just given economic conditions, writ large, there's people obviously are looking for value anywhere they can. It feels like things go up in price pretty significantly. For the past number of years now, it's been on a roller coaster going up as far as possible. And what you said about Paradigm offering a value and getting a lot of speaker for what you're paying for it is something that we definitely strive to do. No, we always try and tail that off with saying by value we don't mean it's inexpensive. Specifically, maybe some of our speakers are less expensive than others, but it's just about giving you more than you're paying for. And the idea is to, especially now, is to have that resonate with people as things continually go up in price. We're trying to give you as much value as possible. And that is our goal with a lot of what we're coming out with. And specifically, we launched recently, announced at Expo our new Premiere series, Premiere V2. And that is a large goal of that series specifically, was trying to pack as much value as possible to give you, not just from the acoustic platform, but all your finishings and your materials that you use. Because that's what we see people wanting. That's what I want in my daily life is to extract as much value out as everything is. It feels like a zero gets added on to every bill I pay every year, to try and keep a price as stagnant as possible, and give you just pack more value into this as possible. And then this is what people seem to want, and this is which is understandable. It's a very reasonable thing to want, and that's what we're trying to give to them.
When I think about that, like, so Paradigm, I think the most expensive speakers you sell right now are in the $20,000 range.
In the US, we're just under 40. It's the Persona 9H.
That's okay, Persona. So when I consider that, like, there are brands out there that go astronomical. So like, I've seen $1 million systems. Is that a market that you see growing? Is that a market that you can ever consider yourself kind of throwing like a Paradigm speaker into? Or is that not kind of where you're seeing the future of the industry going towards?
I don't think you can ever really imagine a future for an industry if it's going to be at the $1 million a system price point. I think that the accessible market for your average person is critical to the longevity and success of the industry as a whole, not just Paradigm. And going into those esoteric price points, it would be a lot of fun. And it would be something that I would very much enjoy doing as a engineering exercise, as a research potentially exercise, as a marketing exercise, and having that flagship. And I think it would be a lot of fun to build something like that, where it was really just we want to go balls to the wall. But I don't think that we'd be building that with the intent that would be the market that we would want to be addressing. I think at some point I'd like to probably do it. You've got me thinking. There's a lot of other, I would say, more critical to our identity aspects of our line right now, and much more pertinent to our dealers and to our customers than an esoteric $500,000 pair of speakers.
That's fair. I think about this and I think I'm jaded in a sense, because we end up going to these different companies. We end up seeing all these different things. And you can very easily get into this mindset that there's a lot of companies selling $1 million speakers, so they must be selling $1 million speakers. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case in general. And then I also kind of consider this idea that when I look around, and a lot of the people that I talk to, either have no idea of what hi-fi is, or what they consider to be high-end audio or kind of high-quality audio is something like the Bose or the kind of I'm going to say like the Sony all-in-one systems or stuff like that, where it's a higher price point relative to like the very bottom of the barrel stuff, but it's not really giving the same level of quality or the same experience that you get with like a brand like Paradigm or MartinLogan or these other kind of hi-fi centric brands, and home theater. I'll throw home theater in there as well because it's the same idea. When you guys are like thinking about that, like do you have approaches? Do you have ways that you say, well, how are we going to convince people that grew up or only use Bluetooth headphones or all-in-one kind of system in a box speaker stuff? How do you get them into exploring and kind of looking at more high-end systems?
I think that's a conversation we have here a lot, right? There's a lot of, I think we talk about it's, the average age of what we consider an audiophile slowly rising. The back when it was very commonplace to have a pair of speakers in your house, there wasn't a sound bar, there wasn't different things. These smaller home theater box systems, and you just had that at your house with a turntable, and so people knew what good sound was comparative to everything else. But I think that's one of the big things is people just don't know because you haven't heard it. And once you hear it, you kind of it's almost like unfortunate for you. Now you know what's out there, and you never knew what you didn't know before. But that is it's getting people in there and being able to experience it and understand what is available to them and how important this is to your enjoyment of the system. It's not just about a huge flat screen TV. I know just a sidebar. There's a dealer demo I'd seen before where they had a big nice home theater and they'd play it for you, and people love it, and they talk about the projector and all this stuff, and then they turn the speakers off and make you watch the video. And they go, how was that? And they go, it's all right. And then they turn the projector off and make you just listen to the audio. And you go, oh my goodness. And so it really lets you understand how much of that experience is the audio. And I thought that was a really cool way of doing it. But it is about driving people into the dealers and having them listen. And from a product development standpoint is trying to get the quality that we strive for. We would have as our bare minimum, at least, to be able to get in front of people. How we get something accessible to people so that you can get in and try it. Because you talked about how many brands there are out there with $1 million speakers, $500,000 speakers. If the industry all goes towards that, there's no entry point to get up to that point. And no one's going to jump into a hobby and drop $1 million on a pair of speakers. For the few people who could even possibly do that, you have a smaller section that would just decide to jump into a new hobby. So there has to be a way up there and an entry point. And so, it is always a big conversation of how to get people into the hobby and understand, because it's valuable to all of us. We're always listening to music. We're always listening to something. And audio comes in many forms, and it's always good to have it in highest quality, for sure.
Yeah, and I love that example. Like from the video side of things, there's always this saying like audio's at least 50% of any good video. And it's so true. You can sit there and listen to audio by itself, but no one's turning on a TV and turning off the audio and just seeing it go.
Right. Well, think about just going to YouTube, and if you come across a video with, there's a video with not great video, but the audio is fine, you'll sit through it. But if you have great video with bad audio, and poor recording, it's unwatchable.
It's painful.
But people don't really kind of connect how important that is, even though you have that response to it consistently across many people. So
So here's another kind of segment in way that I know Paradigm makes headphones, or they made headphones. You guys still have a couple headphone ranges, earphones and on-ear at this point. Is that a way to kind of introduce people to the brand and to kind of like get them into something more? Or do you see that as something totally separate?
I think headphones can be a great entry point for the brand. I think they can be a great extension for the brand in terms of, people that already have Paradigm speakers or MartinLogan speakers. We did a number of years ago come out with a few pairs of headphones, a few pairs of earbuds. I think that they on ear as opposed to over ear. And they sounded excellent. I think that they missed on the execution of them, and just sort of really understanding the target customer that they had in mind for them, and sort of how that was going to be sold and distributed. So that was one of a number of initiatives that was launched sort of during the private equity years, whether it was sound bars or headphones or little 2.1 computer audio systems that they sort of participated in, and then when it didn't catch on very quickly, they shifted to the next one, and so it was sort of a one and done. Again, something that I think I'd enjoy doing and being able to have it on the market. But I think it's, again, there's other things I think I'd like to do first.
Well, and I totally get that, the idea of like kind of focusing on one thing first, get that right, and then move on to something else, as opposed to the shotgun approach to things. When you're thinking about stuff, John, like from your position, when you're looking at kind of where the market is going and how you guys and all these different brands can kind of not only kind of provide products to the next generation of people interested in hi-fi, but how can you make the next generation of hi-fi? Like, are you considering this idea that young kids don't care about audio quality and they're more than happy to listen to compressed audio on shitty Bluetooth speakers? Or do you have a different mindset of who actually cares about high-end audio?
It's interesting, but the cohort that really grew up with terrible Bluetooth audio and not great headphones, and terribly ripped MP3s, off of LimeWire and whatnot. That generation's not actually that young anymore. If we're being honest, I'm part of that generation, and we're not necessarily the youngest anymore. And so you're also looking at a cohort of people that grew up with limitless music access for the first time, where their ability to explore and enjoy music is incredible and far exceeds what 20 years ago anyone thought was going to be the norm in terms of access, in terms of knowledge and availability, and finding new bands and exploring your personal taste. And so I think good audio is self-evident to people when they hear it. And I think people do want better sounding stuff, right? Look at headphone reviews. How much time is actually spent on the audio quality of the headphones, right? They focus on that. And so saying that people aren't interested in better audio, I think is ignoring the fact that their current choice of consumption is much more towards mobile or smaller form factor. But I do think that they appreciate it when they hear it. And I think it's a case of them needing to hit points in their lives where maybe they've got a little bit more space. They've got a little bit more opportunity to, customize their system for themselves. And I think there's just needs to be that realization that it doesn't have to start big. Right, you can start with a pair of speakers and a little 2-channel amp. Hook it into your TV. Buy a little 10-inch subwoofer. It's going to sound great. It's going to provide a better experience, and it doesn't need to be 5.1. It doesn't need to be Atmos to begin with. They just want a better experience, and I think over time they'll naturally gravitate towards doing that.
I love that. And when you were talking about the kind of, it doesn't have to be that expensive, I know you're kind of singing to me and Dennis as well, who runs the SoundStage Access site, because I find the affordability of things can get out of hand. And Blake, you kind of mentioned this idea as well, where everything just adds an extra zero. The speaker system that kind of reminded me of is the MartinLogan Foundation. I think it's the Foundation.
Yeah.
And you guys package that with not an Anthem amp, but a WiiM amp, which That's a whole other thing. That seems like a really cool, I don't know if it's a partnership, like I don't know if it's a cross promotion, but it seems like a really cool way to introduce people to two different brands at once and to get people like a very decent system for a pretty reasonable price.
Yeah, and that was a request that came out of the MartinLogan sales organization. So one of the gentlemen, Sean, who runs the Best Buy account for us, said that, hey, I think it would be a really great product if we could get a pair of our bookshelves with some kind of a streaming amplifier in there. And luckily we have a great relationship with the WiiM guys already. And so we were able to work with them in terms of putting together a bundle opportunity. We put the banana plug terminated speaker wires in there to really, provide a all-in-one. You just need to take this box home. It's got the HDMI cable. You can plug it into your TV. Here's your bookshelves. All the cables are included, and so try and provide a higher performance option than maybe they would find with a soundbar, and trying to do it at a reasonably affordable price. I believe last holidays we had it priced at around $700 for the package when it was on sale. And so,
and when I think about that as well, I'm kind of like, is there more opportunity in the other brands to do stuff like that? And did you see that kind of spur the adoption of these products? Obviously, everyone likes a good sale, but like, do you get that customer feedback? Do you get the people that are like, oh, I never knew MartinLogan was a thing, and now that they have these systems, they're like, wow, like what else do you guys offer? Like what else do you guys do?
Yeah, we do look at those things. MartinLogan, in terms of its distribution, provided an opportunity where putting together that sort of program and moving it at volume made sense, just in terms of how that customer experience is. On the Paradigm side, you've much more got the small independent dealers, and some of them would be putting a Sonos with it. Some of them would be putting a WiiM with it. Some of them would be putting an Anthem with it. And so it's just a case of the independent business person is making their choice in terms of what they want to be offering at sort of a location by location basis. And so there isn't necessarily as much of a one size fits all, and so they'll be using whatever solution they've determined that they want or they think is best for their customers. So there's just a bit more fracturing in terms of not as large of a demand when many people would prefer to choose their own amp, choose their own bookshelf, choose their own speaker cables. So yeah,
that kind of had me think about this other piece, which is you guys both come from the training side of things. So like, how do you see the future of training? How do you see like the education of end customers? Is it always in a dealer environment? Can you sell online and have an equally good experience if you boost return windows or do whatever else? Like, how do you guys approach the customers now from that training aspect?
100%, and I do think that there's the education aspect to the consumer. I think a lot of consumers are far more educated now than they were previously, and have far more interest in objective as opposed to necessarily subjective opinions or a mixture of them. It does come down to education, and it also, though, still always comes down to experience. I can tell you up and down, left, right, how wonderful and amazing this home theater experience is. Going to blow your mind. It's going to be incredible. You're going to get goosebumps. Until it blows your mind, until it's incredible, until you get goosebumps, it can sometimes be, that's the first sort of bridge that for a lot of people they need to cross. And so having retailers is incredibly important from our perspective, for people to be able to look and touch and see and feel the products, because we're talking about, you look at something like a Premiere, you look at something like a monitor, it's a few $100, it's not actually necessarily a small purchase.
Do you think the industry today is going to be the same in 5 years and then in 10 years? Like, how do you think that that's going to change over the next decade?
How is it going to change over the next decade? Technology and everything. I think you're going to hopefully, and this is more a wish list in some ways than a prediction, but I'd love to see some additional standardization within the industry in terms of wireless transfer formats. Sort of getting things in line in terms of streaming and security and those sorts of things. But when we talk about the audio industry, and that's why you mentioned at the beginning, we offer such a wide breadth of products. And when we talk about the audio industry, finger quotes, it's actually a number of very different industries that we sort of all lump together. And there's a lot of companies that play in multiple ones of those industries. And so we've got our two sides, our much more consumer-facing product, and then our much more trade and dealer-facing product, with that market being driven very much by home technology currently. So, we've got our retailers and then our home technology specialists. They're driven by home automation. They're driven by distributed audio, and they're putting in home theaters, and they're putting speakers in multiple rooms in the house. And so that's much more interior design driven. And so you're seeing things like invisible speakers and very, very small aperture speakers, but a lot more of them spread throughout the room, discrete subwoofers. And so you've got one side of the business that's being driven by home interiors and home decoration. Then you've got the other side that's being driven by, enthusiasts and people, your average customer who just wants a great experience. And so how we talk to those people, needs to be very different. Performance is, of course, always part of it. Quality is, of course, part of it. But what gets a dealer who does a lot of, large theater installations through home builder contracts versus, a 2-channel stereo shop or someone looking to buy their first set of speakers.
I'll throw it to Blake too. Like, Blake, what do you see? What do you see as the 5-year kind of change and then the 10-year change in the industry? Do you see the same kind of consumers being around? Is it going to be a new, younger audience? Are people going to be more budget conscious or more willing to buy $1 million setups that they have a mortgage out on?
Yeah, I think obviously as the current customers will be getting older and new people will enter in, and on that side of things, when it comes to, I think we're lucky in when it comes to the passive speaker market, especially for Paradigm, and that like a lot of the crazy technologies that come and fly in and go and different stuff that we kind of stay to the side of that in a lot of senses. It's not like I have to update the HDMI in my speaker consistently to keep up with trends. So, as long as we're striving towards the best audio quality possible, and then the trends there where they go towards what the interiors look like, where are they putting the speakers, and then a lot to do with the ID, right? The industrial design of these speakers and how they fit into the interiors and how people consume their audio and where they're doing it and how these can connect to those systems. So that I see, not drastic changes. Like in some other parts of the business, as John touched on, with integration in different parts of it, as we see technologies flying around. Obviously the one thing that kind of hangs around the corner of everything is AI being mixed into everything, and these very large companies having their electronics, all sorts of control with the Googles and the Apples of the world, and so that side, I'd say it changes so fast in 5 to 10 years. I'm really excited to see where things end up. But we're definitely happy to be along the ride for what goes on there, and then making the speakers to go along with everything that comes. But on the technology side of the things, it's very extremely fast moving. I work on the Anthem side as well, so there we're keeping up with technologies, and it's at breakneck speed. These things can change sometimes. But how it moves in terms of the customers, I think in large part, Paradigm, I think always the value proposition that we offer is going to be strong. I don't think we need to shift from that for any specific reason, or suddenly it's everyone's buying the $500,000, $1 million speakers we keep touching on. There's always going to be a range of customers along the entire price scale, but I think always people are trying to be smart with their money and get as much value as possible. So from that angle, I think everything stays somewhat the same, but it's largely just us pushing our R&D forward and making sure that we're topping what we did last and coming out. So that's what we're always focusing on as most important things, and then keeping an eye on the trends and how they change. But to try and say I know what will happen in 10 years, I don't. But we're trying our best to make sure we keep up with it.
No, that is totally fair as well. There's a lot that could happen, and who knows what the future holds.
Yeah.
Kind of wrapping up our time together. Let's get some fun stuff. So the last question that I like to ask people before they sign off, and this is totally selfish. I steal all the answers and use it for my Spotify playlist. But Blake and John, if you were to tell me a soundtrack to your life, either an album or a song, something that either you're really into right now or something you can listen to the end of time and it's just, it kind of lights you up. What do we got? What do we got for an album or a song from you guys?
I can go. This one might be, I'm not sure how, the one band I've been listening to quite a bit recently, and I've got a very eclectic taste in music, so this might not resonate with everyone, but there is one trendy band which is right up my alley, and I've been listening to quite a bit. It's a new Canadian band, or it's newly on the scene, Engine de Poitrine. Have you heard of them?
Yes, amazing. They're absolutely nuts.
Unreal.
The half frets on the guitar and all that stuff, that's nuts.
Yeah, the microtonal bass, it's some people it's anxiety inducing. For me, it's I love it. I'm a very big Primus fan and other microtonal stuff, King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard. I'm a bit all over the place with my bands, but yeah, them and specifically Fabien. I think I'm going to see them next month play, and so that's cool. That's what I'm all about recently, and hopefully in 10 years they're still making out this crazy music. But yeah, that's what I'm very much into now.
I guess something that I will 100% be still listening to in 10 years with an album. I'll do Make Yourself, Incubus.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I love it. And kind of adding on to that, are you listening to this in the car? Are you listening to this in your home theater setup or on a set of headphones? Like,
it's going to be, honestly, sometimes the mood just strikes me and just kind of whatever's going on. A lot of the time it'll be car, and you sort of listen to it over the course of a couple drives, but.
I love it. Well, we're going to have to kind of circle back in some time and see if those answers change or see if you still got the same affliction for it.
Mine will always be eclectic and weird, so check back in 10 years and I'll have probably some new weird one to top on top of it, but I'll still have this in the playlist for sure.
I love it. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate you guys jumping on and spending some time with me.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you having a chat with us. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time.
Bye now.